Welcome to UELMA 21 Virtual Conference. Today's session is Librarian Panel. Your moderator today will be Mariah Gerlach. Feel free to use the question and answer tab down at the bottom of your screen to post any questions to our panel. Also, if you need closed captioning, please click on the button with the CC at the bottom to enable closed captioning. Again, here is our moderator, Mariah Gerlach, and she will introduce our panel.
Thank you, Chris. We're so excited to be here. Our panel today is 4 amazing librarians. The first one we have Jim Wilson. He is our UELMA president-elect. That means after this conference, he will be the president of UELMA this next coming year. He is also the ULMS president. We just know he is a rock star advocating for school libraries throughout the state, and we're really excited to hear from him. We also have Emily DeJong, who is our current UELMA president this year. So after this conference, she'll move into the past president slot. She does have a master's in information studies from the University of Texas and has taught in schools for 14 years as teacher and librarian in elementary and middle schools, and is currently an elementary librarian. We're excited to hear from her. We are so grateful to have Kathy Carroll. She is the AASL president. She has written many articles that you can find through AASL on Knowledge Quest. She is also the lead school librarian at Westwood High School in Columbia, South Carolina. She is a member of the ALA Black Caucus and International Relations, Ethnic and Multicultural Information Exchange, and Sustainability Roundtable. She's a past member of the AASL Board of Directors, served as AASL President Initiative Task Force for President Stephen Yates, and is an executive board member for the South Carolina Association of School Librarians. She is very busy, but we are so excited to have her. And we have Liz Deskins, who has written a lot of great books in the area of school librarianship, as well as for AASL. We're excited to hear her thoughts as well. If Liz would like to say some more about herself, that would be
There we go.
totally fine.
Okay. Hi, I'm Liz Deskins. I am fairly recently retired, and my goal has always been to write. So I'm excited that I really have the time to write books. I'm happy to write some more when I'm not writing. I also teach some courses for Kent State, and I'm still active in my state organization. So go state organizations.
Yeah, thank you, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have this panel of 4 fabulous librarians, and we're going to talk about this pandemic. I know we've talked about it a lot, but we want to know now what we have learned and what we can take going forward into the future. So if you have any questions to guide the discussion, anything that the audience really wants to know, put that in the Q&A. Otherwise, we will just have these librarians give us some fantastic ideas. So we'll start. I'll just have any of you answer the questions as we go, if you are feeling the need to. What do you think school libraries will look like as we return back to normal? And how can we make that happen? What should we be aiming for?
You know, one thing, so I'm in an elementary school in Salt Lake City School District. One thing is a lot of the librarians have taken on some jobs that maybe we were like, didn't think it would be our job. So for example, the managing of the laptops has been a lot, and sometimes that and the tech side of that has taken over like the library side. And so my hope is that we're able to kind of let them return that to somebody else, and that we can go back to doing our job as a librarian, and understanding that that's an important thing, that the students have devices, but we also, like, the job that we are doing in the library is as important as well. So that's my hope.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would back that up. We've seen the same thing in my school district. It's looked a little different between the levels. So secondary libraries have been completely inundated with Chromebooks. All of the Chromebooks within our district are now housed in Destiny. And when we went into this, the idea was that we would help with the initial circulation. But I've seen a lot of our libraries kind of turn into the Chromebook help desk. And so the scary thing about that is trying to get that reworked so that as we return to our regular library programming through, into next year, that they can do that and not have the expectation of as much Chromebook responsibility. So that has been the big change. Our elementary libraries have not seen that quite as much. They had quite a time at the beginning of this, so about a year ago, when we went on to virtual learning, where there was a real scramble. But I've seen the biggest impact from the Chromebook issue with our secondaries.
This is Liz. I've been out a couple years, but my district went 1-to-1 several years ago. They like to always be ahead of the curve, which was sometimes good. And of course, a lot of that did land in the library. One of the nice things are it had there's a technology department that was very, very active throughout the district, very powerful committee department. And what they did for us is, because all that, of course, was housed in the library, cataloged through the library, checked in, checked out, problem solved. But we created student help desks modeled after the Apple Store. And that was amazing. We had students who signed up, who had initial orientation, who had ongoing coursework. And so in the beginning, they pretty much would talk to the student and then run over to ask us questions. But as the year would progress, they understood more and more, and they could do so much of the problem solving with the other students that my next plan had been for them to create videos, online videos that the tutorials their friends could use. I hadn't got quite that far, but that was very helpful for us and cost effective. It just, students had to be willing to give up their study hall, and that means they were automatically had space in the library, so they were happy.
I think I can definitely relate to many of the comments that were made as far as our situation is concerned, but I think our members have also shared that there are extremes. Some have continued and proceeded almost uninterrupted because a lot of them didn't have to go virtual depending on where they were located. But many of them, there were such severe ramifications that some libraries were closed completely and teachers were put back in the classrooms. So we've seen extremes, but mostly people have been in the middle, but all of them would agree that there have been additional technology responsibilities. And my hope for the future moving forward is that we can regain our space authentically, and that it can be what it was intended for. And while we do want to support the other areas of the school, we have now seen throughout this pandemic the importance of school librarians, and we would like to be able to be relegated back to what we do best, and that is to support teaching and learning. So
I just want to add one more thing. The other thing the pandemic, I think, is done for every aspect of life is to really strip away things that weren't important and make you really evaluate what was important. And so, like, for me, all the stuff about overdue books and books getting lost, it was like, whatever. I just want my kids to have books in their hands. However I need to do that, that's what my goal is. And so I think really saying, what's my objectives and what have I learned that I'm like, this is so important, that all that other stuff kind of fell by the wayside, and continuing to kind of push for those things in our school and let some of that other stuff, that traditional, like, oh, you are 1 week overdue, you can't get a book or whatever, we've really kind of let some of that go because it was really about access.
Excellent. I agree that there were extremes, but the things, I read a lot of Facebook groups and things, the fact that the innovations and the ideas that librarians came up to help support their schools and or their districts, it's amazing the things they stepped up and did from the very beginning, doing online story times and creating information that students and parents could access. I've been so impressed. And I really hope that some of that moves forward with the idea that administrations are starting to recognize that librarians can be leading from the library, or at least a valuable seat at the table as discussions are made, because they're going to find out that, yes, librarians have good ideas. They don't just have to react to what's happened, but they can actually be a step in promoting change. I think that's going to come in a lot of places.
mm-hmm.
Excellent. Those give us some great segues into kind of one of our next topics that I think a couple of you have already touched on. But if you have any more thoughts, the question is in regards to school libraries, what has surprised you the most during this pandemic?
I think one of the things that surprised me most is, as was said, our innovation, our ability to pivot, how we put the students at the forefront, because we heard stories of teachers who spent countless hours above and beyond, were innovative, who were leaders, who took charge, who were out there at the forefront immediately, and who were also concerned about a student's academic achievement, but also the social emotional. I mean, we had some librarians, they constructed crafts or games or just something so that students had to check in every day. And it seemed benign initially, but really they said that was a way for me to have a check-in, to make sure they had a place they had to be so I could see what's going on. It just showed we were thinking holistically. And I think that's something that people realize, that we are concerned with all aspects of our learners. And also what I think surprised me so much is how much we as librarians understood the need for community, because almost immediately we start clamoring together. And that's why ASL immediately started, almost as soon as this happened, we started our town halls, because we just had to reach out. We had to share with each other. And I think that's something I found really surprising, and I don't know why I did, is that we are best when we work together and when we reach out, because our profession sometimes lends itself to being isolated. And yet we realize intrinsically we need each other. Our students need us. And so even though we were isolated physically, it seemed like it brought us all together emotionally and professionally.
Mhm. Very agreed.
I feel like, our district was entirely virtual until the beginning of February, where they started bringing elementary back in a rollout. And I was talking to one of the other librarians today, and she was like, you know what, the most amazing thing is that I've been able to develop relationships with my students, even though I've only been seeing them in Zoom calls. And that even though that was the interaction that we had, and it was once a week or whatever, but we were still able to develop those relationships and get to know our learners and be able to, tell them what books they should check out. And that that relationship building with librarians and the students is critical when you're thinking about trying to teach a child or trying to get them to read a book. It's when they have that relationship with you that they trust you and will listen to what you want to provide for them. And so I just am amazed that we've been able to do that, being not like actually being face to face with our kiddos.
Right. And librarians have students long with longevity. We don't have a student intensely 1 year, but we have a student hopefully their entire career at that school. So in elementary, you may have a child for 5 years or 6 years, and being able to, in spite of all this, develop a relationship with them might be even more powerful than regular in-school time, because they haven't had that same opportunity with maybe all of the people they would engage with. But you're also not, in most cases, someone administering grades, so they can connect with you on a different level. And I think that becomes very powerful relationship that parlays into a lot of things that are supportive for students.
One thing that I think was a surprise, well, maybe not a surprise, but an affirmation that even within our school district, there's still such a lack of understanding of what the library is there for. And I know Kathy talked about this in her first session, about the knowledge that we actually do have standards, not only the AASL standards, but we have standards set forth by the State Office of Education. And I think that comes as a real surprise often. And I know we've focused on this, particularly in our secondary team meetings, to talk about our standards. And yet, as we now approach the end of the year and we try and resolve some of these issues with technology, we have to continually remind people that, we don't just sit and check out books. We connect with kids. We have standards to teach that are standards that can make or break it for kids in life, and their success, particularly media literacy, such a big deal right now. So that's been a surprise, and unfortunately another affirmation of what I already knew, but something we have to continually work on.
We've seen a lot of changes happen to school libraries throughout this last year. What changes do you think are here to stay?
Extended use of technology. I think, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. It's here and it will continue to be here. So it's our job to make it effective and useful and, really extending and enhancing education. And I think that librarians are in a very good place to bring ideas to that table.
I think we've learned the skills to really take the library beyond the four walls. And that's always something that's talked about, but like, I never did a screencast before this year. And now I'm like the master of the screencast, and that really opens it up to you can quickly make videos about anything. So parents just they're like, hey, I can't figure out whatever. I can just screencast a minute thing, send it their way. And it's so much easier than trying to type out first you're going to, and so things like that where you can really support people. I think those technology skills that we learned, how to do an online read aloud, how to use Canvas. I mean, a lot of people went in not having a clue. And now we have this student system that we can use with our students. And then the other thing is like the use of Zoom, because, when kids are sick or we have some kids here and some kids not, it's like nobody has to be left out. We can include everybody because we have this tool to bring everybody in. And so that's one thing I've really enjoyed. And I think it's going to help us in the future.
I think something I've noticed just with myself is that I've reached out more to other stakeholders, because I would rely on my print materials and I would rely on people in the building oftentimes, but now I collaborated quite a bit with our public school librarians. And I collaborated with people in the community who had areas of expertise, because I couldn't bring classes into the library to share information with them. And I think that's something that stretched me as a professional, and that's something I'm going to continue. And I think others will as well, is that I'm going to reach out and think and bring more people into our community. People who are experts, people who have the resources, because initially we were inundated with resources. There were so many and I was so eager to get them out that I just shared everything. And then I thought, okay, I'm overwhelmed. I can only imagine how they feel. And so then I pulled back, and then I started curating more effectively, but also I have broadened my scope of collaborators, and that's something I'm going to continue doing.
That's great. I know, particularly in our elementary school libraries, they've had to be very creative. Some of our elementary school libraries started out, and some still are not open. And so we saw our library technicians traveling from classroom to classroom, pulling a cart of books and then their cart that they use for, holding their laptop and things like that. And despite all of that, they have definitely stepped up and tried to be creative, continue to try and make it fun for the students. Just a lot of exciting things that they've done. And, I think it's pushed the thinking out of the box a little bit. And so that, we can look at things differently now and use it to enhance, hopefully, a return to somewhat of normal, where we still have students coming into the library. But I think it has taught us that we can work around some of the difficulties that we may see, particularly for the elementary library. So.
I really hope that all of this has really developed some great collaboration between the library and other content areas, other teachers, other levels, and that can stand. I mean, initially, I think a lot of people reached out frenetically because they were all panicked to getting things everywhere from everyone. And then people got to a point where like the teachers that there, I just need to be right here and just get done what I can with this group. And I hope that we can get back to a point where people really say, no, it is better together. I found a couple people that we have worked so well together through this, and maybe we can model what's going on and really build that collaboration piece, which only helps our students if we can do that.
I can say that's been a fantastic part for me, always trying to get in with the other content teachers, and this has helped push that along further. So similar to that, can you think of any other practices, other parts of our school librarianship that have made us even more relevant, have made us more maybe secure and stable in our communities? We know that we're valuable, but have we seen that value translate into the other parts of the school?
And so that Liz and Kathy know, like in our state, in my district, we're the only district that has certified librarians in the elementary school as well as secondary. And so we are always kind of like, our job secure. And the thing that I loved is in March when they were like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna support the teachers? Their first thought was, we need to train the librarians on how to use Canvas because they're the ones who are going to support the teachers and the parents. And that was the first thought. And we were the first people to get the training. And yeah, I was excited. And I really felt like they understood our value and they knew that we would be able to learn it and we would be able to support our communities. And I just love that was the first thought that they had was, let's get the librarians trained.
That's awesome. That's truly awesome because it doesn't happen enough. But another thing, I don't know if in some cases, I think it's been exceptional, and maybe others not so much, is the communication with parents. I think in a lot of these cases, because you might be doing whole class things, but you're also doing a lot of independent support with the child who has trouble, a parent who's very frustrated, all those things, you might be that person. And I think building that strong relationship with your parent community is also a good job security. It also helps everybody, but it doesn't help that you've got these people in your pocket. If the school board starts muttering about something, they can all jump up and speak to what you need, what you have.
I can definitely say I know parents more this year than I ever have, and it's a mixed blessing, I can tell you, but I'm happy for the positive interactions.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I know has also been a benefit and has reshaped the way we approach things is our connection with our county library system through SORA.
Mm-hmm.
And we've really tried to push not only the materials that we have invested in within our district, but we've been lucky enough, and I think most of the districts in the Salt Lake Valley have been able to connect with the Salt Lake County Library, and I think other districts around the state have probably been able to do that as well. But I think that's been a big plus. It's taught us to reach out and connect and not to be separate entities. So that's been a benefit.
And I think one thing we've focused on is creating tutorials and just information for our teachers having to do with copyright, privacy, media literacy, things of that nature. And so they've been very appreciative. Also, suddenly people are interested in our databases and how to navigate. And so we're happy to explain. So there are a lot of things we've been doing, and now they're suddenly seeing its value, and we're right there with the professional development to assist. Obviously, we do it individually, but we also have things so just generally if they need to step in just for a moment and kind of give some feedback. So that's really been helpful. And they're thinking, oh, really? And I don't know how to take it. Oh, I didn't know you did that. And I'm thinking, really? Okay, well, welcome to my world. And I want you to stay here with me, even after this is over. So that's been a benefit as well, reaching out to our teachers in a new way.
Yeah, like Kathy said, I purchase Scholastic Bookflix and I purchase Pebble Go for my school each year using different funds. And then now I've been hit so hard without having a book fair and stuff like that. And then our funds just keep getting cut. And so I was like, I can't pay to renew this. And so I went to my principal and I could show him the data. Like this year, that those databases have been used more than ever, like the last 5 years. Like they are getting used constantly. And it just makes me excited because I would teach kids and stuff, but that message wouldn't really get home as well. And now that they're doing it also online with their parents, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is a great resource for having my student be read to. And so I love that that connection has been made and that my principal realized the value and was able to support us so that we can continue to provide that for our students.
There have been some really good stories about people, book budgets are just going nowhere, which is heartbreaking to me. My master's degree is in literature for children and young adults, but the fact that people's database, that budget is going up because now they realize there's a need for this. You know, you might say, we don't have the books to support this research anymore, but we have these databases, and they go, and now they're like, oh, a database, and it can be wherever the student is, and it's open 24/7. That's awesome. In high school, you get a lot of those people who want to have the emergency conversations, you know, at 11 o'clock at night, they would like to text you or send you an email. And so the fact that they say, well, I will not be available, but the database will be there.
And just as a personal anecdote, just a couple of weeks ago, I don't understand why I was on the computer at 10 o'clock on a Friday, but I was, and a student was there. Can you help me with? And I'm thinking, okay, because as a teacher I'd been working with, I knew the paper was due. Can you help me with? And it had to do with databases. And I thought, really, honey, you had all week. But yes, I did. So once again, just showing that necessity is the mother of invention and a deadline makes them intellectually curious. So, and we got it done. We got it done.
Yay.
I love that quote. A deadline makes them intellectually curious. I'm writing that one down.
I'm curious, with everything we've talked about, how do you see your use of literature, your book clubs, or just using books with students in general? Do you see that as I'm sure it's changed a lot this year. What do you think the changes might continue to be?
Are you referring to as far as digital copies versus?
Any kind. I mean, do you see that your students are going toward digital? Because mine were always very adverse to that. If there was any other means rather than an ebook, they would go for that. But just as yourself, what are you promoting? Are you having ebook book clubs, or are you having thoughts about that? Or have you been having online book clubs? Do you think that would, I see a lot more of those. Do you think these book clubs will continue, or I'm just curious, yeah, what part literature is going to play again in our role?
For us, the parents and the children expressed fatigue with using computers all the time. And so we actually started to try to figure out how we could get print copies. Like we had the great resource, but there was something about having a physical copy. And then also when you're trying to teach kindergarten first how to read online, they were like, they don't know how to turn the page. They don't know which way to hold the book. There's like, principles of print or concepts of print that you need the actual book. And so I was telling teachers, like, we can get them copies and here's how we can do this. And then you can quarantine it. And so it became for us, like, I love the ebooks and it's great, but at the same time, we needed them to have physical books so they weren't constantly on computers because they already were for school all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that, Emily. And I can't remember one of my recent meetings, one of the librarians did say kids still prefer print. I'm sure more have, we've definitely seen increased usage in the digital content as we've, pushed sort of more but kids still love to hold the book. And so I would anticipate that as we move back towards our book clubs and those kinds of things, that we'll probably still be trying to get kids to hold the books and read them and turn the page.
And we have a pretty robust book club right now, membership. And we've been reaching out to a lot of authors who have been generous enough to meet with us for short periods of time. And so we've been trying to get creative and have a variety of activities for our book club members, but overwhelmingly, they too prefer print, as do most of our student body. And for example, given a choice between a print or digital option of the same text, invariably our students will choose the print. And that is always a first choice. And also I've seen a divide that they are more accepting of ebooks if it's for research or if it's nonfiction, but if it's fiction, they still want the print. And so I hope that our book club, when it transitions back to being more face-to-face and not virtual, I hope that it will maintain the momentum, but also a lot of our budget is going toward print. We're still obviously balancing it with digital, but a lot is still going for print.
Thank you, everybody. I was very curious about that. They're checking for questions. While they're checking for questions, I'm going to throw out something that maybe not benefit directly for students, but something that I started in Ohio a couple years back. I think 10 now. In our library or district library meetings, we never had time to just talk about the books because there are always initiatives and things. So another librarian and I were very frustrated. We said, fine, we are going to start our own club that's called Librarians Who Read. And we made arrangements to meet at Panera so that no one would have to clean their library or worry about snacks. And you just bring whatever book you're interested in right then, that you might be working. It could be a new book, it could be an old book you found, whatever. And it didn't matter what level you were, you just came. If you had books to share, great. If you just wanted to listen, great. And this is still going very, very strong. Now it's virtual and the whole state is involved. When before you had to kind of be within driving distance. But it's just been such a benefit, a personal benefit to us as librarians and professional development because we can't read all the books. It's amazing how few duplicates we get of books at these monthly meetings. So it's just a nice thing to do. And that way you'll hear about a lot of books. We can't read them all. So we know what's more that's out there. Sometimes it's a multiple districts and you might get a multiple of reviews saying, yes, Columbus Public, which is very urban, very troubled, like a lot of the major, they would say, you know what, that my students won't be ready for that at this level. Where one of the private school librarians would say, oh, we're using it at such and such. It was interesting. So you got perspective to really think about where you placed a book and what you want to do with it. So that's just my ad for something, didn't cost anybody anything. Well, maybe that cup of coffee at Panera, or for me, it was always the cookie, but it was worth it.
I love that idea. And I think it would be beneficial to, we tend to just work within our own districts, our own areas. And yet we probably run into the same issues or have the same questions. And not only is it a great opportunity to share good literature, but it's a great opportunity to just, rub elbows and talk about things that, if a book is an issue over in this district, chances are it could be in this district, kind of put our eyes on things that other people are experiencing.
Right.
I honestly can't help myself. That sounds like a KQ blog. I'm sorry, I had to say it. I can't help myself. I think you need to think about writing that up.
Oh, you know what? I would love to, because I think it's been so easy for us that I just think people would go, oh, we could replicate that. All right. I'm challenged. I'll try it. Thanks.
Excellent. We have about 10 minutes left in this session. We have not had any questions come in the Q&A, so I'll just remind everyone watching that you can do that. Write your question in there and the panel will be happy to answer it. So in the meantime, I'll just go back to our list. Something that we are kind of always aware of in Utah, Emily mentioned that Salt Lake School District is the only one with certified librarians in the elementary level. And we see that throughout different districts, different levels of having a librarian and not. And we also know we have some schools that don't have the library at all. And so it's kind of something we as a collective are always kind of fighting against. So do you think that we have learned anything in this pandemic to kind of help us with that advocacy tool? To kind of push for that, keeping the librarian, or in fact, reinstating the librarian. What kind of tools can we use?
Well, I think social media was made for us. Like, it's really hard to walk around and be like, I did this awesome lesson, but social media is made for that, to say I did this awesome lesson. And so I feel like when I learned about Twitter, that like changed my professional life. And I just use it mainly professionally to connect with authors and other librarians, and just being able to connect with my community and say, this is what's going on in the library and it's incredible. And then people can see what we're doing. And so I hope that we continue to use social media as a tool. But the other thing is just, I think that we've always kind of been in the library, and like people have mentioned, this has brought us out of the library. Jim was saying in his school how at elementary, they've been pushing carts around. I'm more visible out in the school building because I'm not really as locked into being in the library. And so I've been able to get out, and I think just that visibility has helped people to see like what I can do, and has helped me to have conversations. And I've enjoyed not just being so locked into being in the space, in the physical space.
I think this is almost the perfect storm for us to gain some traction, in that there is countless data out there extolling the benefits of having a certified school librarian in the building, and how it supports teaching and learning, and it raises test scores, et cetera. I mean, it's just, it's there, it's already present. And then I think when the pandemic began, we were at the forefront of so many initiatives, so many efforts, and I think it was visible to a lot of people. And now the educational community is concerned about the COVID slide, and it's a real thing. And then you already have the data previously acquired showing how we're beneficial. You've seen what we're capable of. You're now concerned about this. And so I just think I hate to say, it's just common sense. It's just good pedagogy. It's good, it's sound educational thinking to see that we're having problems. We already have a resource that's beneficial. It's proven.
Mhm.
And to move forward, this is what we need to have all hands on deck for our learners. So therefore, I'm hoping we have to advocate for ourselves. I think we have gained advocates throughout, including parents.
Mhm.
But I think we also have to contact legislators. We need to have a change in how we're classified, but there's so many things we can do. But I just think this is an opportunity for us to have a better footing, because now I think people do see we weren't just in that space. We were out and we were everywhere. We were curbside, we were in the community, we were on social media, we were virtual, we were there. And so, and we're just not there to be there. We're there doing the work. So, and ASL is also acquiring a lot of data that we're moving forward with. We had snapshots, we were asking people to give input, et cetera. So I just feel good about this. I think this is our time. This is our window of opportunity, and that's how I'm looking at it.
You know, I agree. And I think the other big thing is awful to say, but fake news was such a huge support for us, catapulting us into where we've always been. We are the ones helpers, finders of the truth, guardians against copyright, misinformation. And I think that not just teachers, but you're right, parents, community people, everyone is starting to realize how important this is. And they're going, where is it that my children are actually learning about this media? And critical thinking, they're all talking about, those are our bailiwick. And I really think that's going to also, we just wrote new library guidelines for the state of Ohio. We don't have standards, we only have guidelines. But still, we got new guidelines, and a good chunk of it is media literacy, because that's, it was lacking in everybody else's standard. So we felt like that would get us on to a more even playing field when it comes to getting a little more respect from the state legislature on our roles.
I completely agree, Liz. And for both Kathy and Liz, we've had two big issues in our state that all to me have to do with media literacy and the fact that we need to teach students how to safely, properly find good information. One of them, we have a big issue with databases going on right now in our state. Kind of outside entities are pushing narratives of obscene and pornographic images on EBSCO and things like that. So that has actually landed in the legislature as a House bill. So we've been dealing with that. We had a school district issue recently. And I completely agree. The third standard for our state in the library standards is media literacy. And as we push more students onto devices, onto databases, we give them more access. Common sense would say that we must be teaching, K through 12, we must be teaching media literacy, which also includes digital citizenship, which is another huge issue. And so I think it's a big opening that we have to really say, hey, this is what we do and we can do it well.
Piggybacking on what Liz and Jim have been saying, like that was another thing that came up is the digital citizenship and like the fear that people had about cyberbullying now that all the kids were online, and how to act appropriately online, as well as safety, because we're talking about putting a computer that has YouTube access in the hands of a kindergartner. And so that was one of the first things they said is they were like, you have got to teach these, like that has got to be the library lessons, is digital citizenship and safety online, not to talk to people you don't know in real life and things like that. And things that you're like, am I really going to be talking to a 6-year-old about it? But the access that they've had, that they need that information. And so that's where they've asked the librarians to step up in a district and teach those skills.
Great.
We can have such a long discussion on this, I'm sure. We just have a couple minutes left, and we do have some questions coming in to the feed now. So I don't know if we'll get to answer them all. So I'll just go to this one here. What is the most innovative way that you have seen to connect with the kids that has had the most bang for the buck?
I think for me, when I was thinking about doing read alouds, I thought about pulling, read alouds from other sources. And I read this article, and I don't remember where it came from, but it said the most important thing is that you're making that connection with your students. And so I would film myself reading the book to them. And even though I looked like junk sometimes, I was like, whatever, I'm going to do this. And I really feel like they would come by to pick up stuff, and they would all be like, there's a librarian. And even though like mine were all asynchronous, so I wasn't teaching them live, but they had that relationship with me just from putting my face on there and me reading them the stories myself. And so that's one thing that I did.
That's really cool. I think that was they probably saw your face more than they would in a normal library time.
They're all like, I liked your YouTube video.
You got way cool, way fast. It sounds to me from the conversation that these virtual book clubs have been very, very successful. And I'm wondering if it's a case of reaching that child that you might not ordinarily might have great contact with. Okay, they use the library. They're not one of the bad kids that wants to hide out in your space. They're not one of the AP honors kids that wants to be there for a whole different reason. But the kids that are really sometimes in the cracks, that are not as noticed. I think these book clubs have been an amazing space where they can have some safe conversation and socialization. And I think that that's something that's, I mean, been a bang for the buck.
That's excellent. All right, Jim is going to answer a question for us, and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
So this question was from Jennifer Booth about the pandemic changing our views on our careers as librarians, and if we would encourage someone to become a librarian after the past year. I think it's reaffirmed the importance of the career, but the battle is always there because we do so much. We do so many different things to continue to educate our stakeholders and the decision makers on the importance of the job. So I wouldn't shy anybody away from doing it, but I would say, you know, definitely jump in and continue to advocate and push the importance of what we do in the library.
All right, thank you. Thank you to our panelists. We are just so grateful that you have given us this time that we could ponder these questions and your responses. We're so grateful for that. And we will have to close the session now as we are out of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.